Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. We will continue with our ABAP programming. We will start with conditional control statement or conditional control structure. So what is conditional control structure? What is the first type? First type is our if and if. Okay. Before that, what is conditional control structure? Conditional control structure is nothing but a set of code where we can do the comparison, or based on our comparison we can write our logic in the code. What is conditional control structure? A set of code where we will compare and use our logic to get the requirement. Okay, so what is the first type? First type is if and if. You must have known in Java, right, in if else in Java. Similarly, in ABAP, it is if and if and if. Okay, it will start with if and close with and if. Whatever the code we will write inside the if and if. This is our controlled statement, conditional control statement. So, what is the syntax? Syntax will be our if. First will be our if one. First one is our if. Then we will compare. Okay, I will write it in separate. Okay, so for if and if syntax, our first statement will be if. Then we will compare between two values or three values or whatever, multiple variables. This is our first if. If the comparison is true, then the below statement. Suppose okay, first I will write the entire syntax, then we will see. If comparison, then statement 1, else if statement 2, else statement 3, and closing of if closure and if. Okay, this is our syntax. If statement 1, else if statement 2, else statement 3, and if. There may be many else if based on our comparison. Okay, so if comparison x, y, or whatever, if the comparison is true, then statement 1 will be executed. Okay, if the first comparison will be true, then statement 1 will be executed. If it is false, then statement will come to here, else if. If this comparison is true, else if comparison is true, then statement 2 will be executed. If this is false, then it will come to else. If the comparison is true, then statement 3 will execute and it will close the control structure. If the first statement only true, then the statement 1 will execute and rest of these will not execute. It will come out of the structure. If this is false, then only it will come to the second comparison. Okay, if the first comparison is true, then the first statement will execute and rest of all will not execute it. System will come out of the structure. If the first one is false, then it will come to second. If the second one is false, then it come to third. Okay, the first one is if and if. So let's see one example in our code. Okay, we will format this one. We'll comment it out. How to comment? Right click, format, comment out lines. Okay, now copy the program. paste it. We'll see one by one. So I have clearly explained about parameters keyword. So please, if you understand the concept, then write it down in the comment section what is parameters keyword and why we are using parameters keyword. So with help of parameters keyword, we declared three variables P1, P2, P3. But if you notice here, we have not declared any length or type, any length or data type. So by default, if you have not mentioned anything, so the by default length will be 1 and type will be C character. By default, what is the length? By default, length will be 1 and type C. If you declared like P1 is similar to P1 of length 1 and type C. Similarly, P2 and P3. We declared three variables named P1, P2, P3 with help of parameters keyword so that user can input some value to these fields. Our end user will input some fields, input some value to these fields, and we will compare those fields. Okay. Now, if P1 is equals to P2, if P1 is equals to P2, if this comparison is true, whatever value entered by our end user, we will compare those values. If P1 is equals to P2, then we will write P1 is equals to P2. Okay, P1 variable is equals to P2. Whatever the value given by end user P1 and whatever the value given by end user for P2. And this equals to is called as literal. Why it is called as literal? Because we have put it in a single quotation. Okay, whatever we want to display in output and we have to put it in a single quotation, we have to call it as a literal. What is literal? Literal is anything but anything which is inside a single quotation ready for output, which is literal. Okay, this one is literal and these two are variables and it will contain the value whatever the end user will provide. Okay, so parameters P1, P2, P3. If P1 equals to P2, right? Okay. Now we will save this. Why it is coming as red? I think there is some kind of error is there. We'll see what is the error. So P1 is equals to P2, then it will execute this statement. If P1 is equal to P2 true, if it is true, then this statement will execute. Else if it is false, if the P1 is equals to P2 first comparison is false, then it will come to the second comparison. Second comparison is what? Else if. We have one more comparison. We can compare one more condition with one condition. P1 equals to P3. We can compare P1 to P2 and we can compare P1 to P3 as well. That is why else if P1 equals to P3. If it is true, then this write statement will execute. Write P1 equals to P3. Okay, P1 equals to P3. If this is false, if this condition is false, then it will come to this comparison. Else if, again else if P2 equals to P3. The number of comparison we have, we can use that number of else if statement. But after P2 equals to P3, so we compared P1 to P2, P1 to P3 and P2 to P3. Now we don't have any comparisons left. That is why else is our last option. If you don't left out with any other comparison, then else is your last option. Okay, if P1 equals to P2, it is true, then write statement will execute. If false, then else if will now trigger. P1 equals to P3. If it is true, then this write statement will execute. If it is false, then again it comes to else if P2 equals to P3. If it is true, then this write statement will execute. If it is false, then it comes to else. And in the else section, whatever the statements will there, it will be executed. So If P1 equals to P2 false, then it comes to P1 equals to P3. If P1 equals to P3 also false, then it comes to P2 equals to P3. If this is also false, then must be it all are different. P1 equals to different, P2 equals to different, and P3 equals to different. So we have to write it as all fields are different. Okay. Now, if I check syntax, what error I am getting, why it is coming in red. Okay. I understand now. So why we are getting the error? Because after variable we have to put it comma. Okay. Because I will explain you. See, in the right statement, whenever we write the variable, this is a variable, right? So it will contain the value. After value, we have to give comma because we have to specify another variable and another literals. So everything needs to be separated with a comma. So P1 comma literal P2, P1 comma literal P3, P2 comma literal P3. All fields are different. Okay. Now check syntax, activate, execute. So we have our three field P1, P2, P3. Why we are getting employee ID, employee name and date of joining? Because in our last program, we use the same variables P1, P2, P3. In our last program, we use the same variable P1, P2, P3 and we added end user text to these fields. How we have added P1, P2, P3 end user text? Go to text elements, selection text. With help of selection text, we already added P1, P2, P3 as employee ID, employee name and date of joining. That is why it is coming as P1, P2, P3. Okay. So what we will do, we will remove this one. Okay. We will delete the selection text for P1 and for P2 delete, and for P3 we will delete all the selection text for P1, P2, P3. Now we will see the program. Okay, now we have to save. Yes, activate, back, activate. Yeah, now we are getting P1, P2, P3. So end user will give any character. Suppose P1 equals to A, P2 equals to B and P3 equals to C. Now if I execute, what will happen? First comparison will all fields are different. Okay, why the output is all fields are different? We'll get back to our program and we'll see. User input three values A, B, C to P1, P2, P3. Okay, now system will compare P1 equals to P2. P1 value is A, P2 value is B. So it is false, then it will come to this part. Now it will compare P1 equals to P3. So P1 value is A and P3 value is C. Again it is the comparison will false. So again it comes to else if P2 equals to P3. So P2 is B and P3 is C. Again it is false. So it will come to else. And this right statement will execute. All fields are different. And we will at last we will close the control structure with ENDIF. What is the syntax? If and if. Inside if and if we will have multiple else if and else. So now again if I execute, again it will ask the user to give some value. Now A, let's see, here also A and here also B. Now if I execute, A equals to A, P1 equals to P2. Now if I write, if I want to write P1 equals to P2, then how can I write? I have to make it P1, P2 as literal. So here we will write as P1 and P2. So what we will do, we will change our coding now. we will remove this comma and remove the literals from equal. We will give single quotation here and single quotation here. Now it is a literal P1 equals to P2 for first statement. Okay, if P1 equals to P2, condition is true, then it will write as P1 equals to P2. Okay, similarly we can do to these things also. You can try with your demo system for this. You can practice this if condition, if and end if control structure, and if you have any doubt you can write it in the comment. Now if I save, check syntax, activate, execute. Now if user given the value A and B, okay, execute. Now P1 equals to P2. We can change the code as per our requirement. Okay, now this is our first type, if and end if. So when to use if and end if? When we have to compare two or multiple variables. Okay, this is user and user input variables. Okay, not our developed variables, because we have already used parameters keyword. If we use data keyword, then it will be a variable and we have to give the value only. End user will not able to give the value. So if we have multiple variables and we have to compare the variables for our requirement, then in that case we can use if and if and if. Okay, in that case we can use if and if. Now we will comment it out. Now we will see the next type. What is the next type? Next type is case and case. Let's go to our PPT. Yeah, so we have discussed if and end if. We see the syntax. What is the syntax? If, else if, else if, else if, or else, and at the closing statement end if and if. Okay, this is our if and if syntax. Next type is case and case. So what is case and case? It is another type of control structure statement, conditional control structure statement. Okay, so what is the syntax for case and case? The first statement will be case, then followed by when with statement 1, when statement 2, when statement 3, and end case. This is the syntax. Okay, so what is the syntax for case and end case? First, when to use case and case. First we will see when to use case and case. Whenever we are trying to write some logic based on single variable. Suppose we have one variable and our logic is entirely depends on the value of the variable. Okay, the value of the variable. Our entire logic is depends on this complete single variable. Okay, whatever the value inside the variable, we have to write the logic based on that. In that case, we can use case and end case. Okay, here there is no comparison. Our logic is totally depends on value of the variable. In case of case and case, there is no comparison. We are not going to compare one variable to other, like if and if. In if and if, we are comparing one variables to other variable, but in case of case and case, we are not going to compare. There is no comparison. Our logic is totally depends on single variable. Okay, so what is the syntax of case and case? Okay, and v1, this is the variable where our logic is depends. Okay, for case, this variable, in case, this variable. Now when the value of this variable, suppose this variable is 5, when the value of variable is 5, we have to write some code. When the value of this variable is 1, we have to write some code. When the value is 5, it is true, so this statement will execute. When 1, this statement will execute. Similar to if and if, but here there is no comparison. Here totally the logic depends on this variable. Case variable, when the value of the variable is true, this statement is execute. When the value of the variable is true, this statement will execute. Okay. So when when this condition is true, statement 1 will be execute. When this condition will true, statement 2 will execute. When this condition is true, statement 3 will execute. Okay. Similar to if and if. If this one is true, then this two will not execute, this one only execute. Okay. And the syntax is case, when, and end case. This is the syntax. Okay. Here there is no comparison. Our logic is totally depends on the value of the variable. Directly depends on this single variable. Okay. So in case of if and end if, we have multiple variables so that we can compare. And when to use the if and end if? In case of complex logic with multiple variables. But in case of case and case, there is only one variable. There is no comparison. And we have to write the logic based on this variable. Okay. Now, if you understand the concept between if and end if and case and end case, you can write what is the difference between these two conditional control structure in comment. Okay, you can write it in the comment. What is the difference between if and end if and end case? Okay, case and end case. Now let's see one example for case end case. Okay. Now see, we declared one variable p1 type I. Type I means integer type. Okay, type integer. So end user will give integer value. Okay. Now our logic is totally depends on this variable p1. Our logic is totally depends on this variable p1. We are not going to compare p1 with any other variable. We have to write the code based on this p1 variable. So the next statement is case p1. Case p1. So what is the value end user can give? Suppose end user give the value as 1. So in case p1, when 1, when the value of p1 is, when the value of p1 is 1, when 1. Okay. What is the syntax? Remember the syntax. Case with variable and when with value. Remember, it's very easy. Just focus case variable and when value. This is the syntax. Case p1 when 1. When the value of p1 is 1, write p1 equals to 1. Similarly, when 2, write p1 equals to 2. And end case. This is the closing of the control structure. Okay. So what is the syntax? Case, variable, and when, value. Parameters, we declared one variable. Then case p1, when 1, write p1 equals to 1. If end user give 1, then this one will be true. And this write statement will be executed. When end user will give 2, this one will be true. And this write statement will execute. Okay. Now save. Check syntax. Activate. Execute. So p1, end user will give some integer value. Suppose I have given 2 and execute. So p1 equals to 2. The second when statement will execute. The second when statement will execute. This one. Okay. We can write one more statement also. when others. Okay, suppose uh, user has not given 1 or 2. When others, right, value is different. Okay, now check syntax, activate, execute. Now if I enter 5 and execute, value is different. Last when statement is executed. Okay, similar to else if and else. Okay, similar to else if and else and if. Okay, there is no big thing in case and case. It is very easy. Just remember the syntax: case, variable, when, value of the variable, and we have to write our logic here. Okay, in real time you will get many programs where you will find case and case. Okay, in for example, if you are working in FICO, the entire program of bank statement, there you will see the case and case regularly. Okay, so I hope you understand the concept of controlled structure, conditional structure. In the next class we will see constants. Okay, if you have any query, please comment below the video and I will try to reply to you. Thank you. Please subscribe the channel.